Good evening, everybody. This is Brad. Theresa's back in her bedroom watching some TV and doing some loom knitting. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about was some of our pets that we've had in the past, and even though some of them have been gone for a lot of years, how they are just absolutely never ever forgotten. Today is November 18th. 2022. It is now about 8:08 p.m. Last night it got down to like 25 degrees, and it's probably about the coldest temperature we've seen since we left Wyoming. There was a little bit of frost on the ground. We were going to get up and we were going to go down to Tender Mercies and take down the hats, and we had a whole bunch of dog toys that we've got mainly for Charlie over the years, and he's only got a couple that he plays with. And he's also getting to that age where he doesn't like his toys too much anymore. He'd rather chew on me than some of his toys. But anyway, I am getting ready to do some more experimenting with resin pour. I'm going to start messing a little bit with the mica powder. I'm going to start messing with some of the things that are not intended to be molds, but we can use them as molds. So I'm hoping to have them all poured and set and everything, so when we do our video tomorrow, we can actually show them. So, but that's what be happening today. We had a really, really rough night last night. I didn't get to sleep until after 6, and I was just enough pain between my back, and I don't know why my thighs hurt sometimes so bad at night, especially in the quadriceps. And it's just, it's you can't ignore it. You can't. It's one of those where you just can't push the pain. It's right there. And so I went back to the back bedroom, and I knew I was doing a lot of thrashing and jumping around. I didn't want to wake Theresa up, so I went back to the back bedroom, and like I said, it was after 6 before I went to sleep. So we ended up getting up about 8:30, and then we went back and we took a nap for about an hour. And so yeah, it was a rough night, and we spent the day cleaning house. Theresa made a taco ring, which she took these crescent rolls and she laid them out in a circle, and then she poured taco meat in there and cheese, and then folded them over and baked it in the oven. And we cut chunks out of it, and then we topped them with sour cream and salsa and lettuce and onions, and God, they were good. So if anybody's interested, ask her for it, and I'm sure she could send you a link to the recipe. But yeah, it was awful good. So the one, we've all had those critters that they mean so much to you, and they're such a part of your lives. And they'll always live right here. We lost Bitsy probably about 10-12 years ago, and she was 20 years old. And here is a picture of her on my phone. There you go. And she was my little girl, and Bitsy weighed out at she was a little tiny thing. When we got her, she was about 5 months old, and we got her and Misty, who was a tricolored female. We got them at the same time, and Misty was about 22 months old, and Bitsy was about 5 months old. And Bitsy was probably about one of the homeliest looking kittens you've ever seen in your life. She was all legs and a little short body, and her tail was just maybe an inch and a half long, and it had a hook on the end. And unless you actually felt it, you couldn't tell that it was a hook. But once in a while, she'd jump into a box or something and get that hook hung up on the cardboard, and just sent her into a blind panic. But we went out to animal control there in Casper, and we were looking at cats. We had lost Theresa's cat Charity a couple months before, and it was really tough losing a cat. And so we went out to Metro, and we saw these two cats side by side. And I went to look at Misty, and she was not a real big cat, but she was definitely pudgy. You could tell she loved her food, and I have never ever seen a cat so laid back as her. And so I started reaching for her cage, and I was going to pet her on the nose a little bit. She was right there at the bars, and as I was reaching my arm across, right next to her, these paws came shooting out of the cage, and she grabbed a hold of my arm with her claws and pulled it back, and then she bit me. And I was just shocked that this little cat would do that. And Theresa asked me, "Well, what happened?" I said, "She bit me." And Theresa said, "We'll take that one." And that was one of those where Theresa always says it was love at first bite. And that was Bitsy. And she was all legs, little short body. And at her heaviest, I think she maybe weighed out at about 6 or 7 pounds. She was a little tiny thing. But I have never ever seen an animal with attitude like she could have. And we brought her home, and she was all sorts of playful and rambunctious and everything, and very, very loving. But then if you did something that she wasn't happy about, she would let you know it. She never really bit that much, but she would turn her back on you, and she would raise that little tail, and she was kind of mooning you, and it was like, "Hey, kiss this." And but yeah, she was such a sweetheart. And some of the things that she would do is she would get either a rubber band or a hair tie, and she would hook it on one of her toes, and she'd grab the other end in her mouth, and she'd pull it back and stretch it out, and then she'd let go of it with her mouth. And once in a while, you'd be sitting there minding your own business, and you'd get smacked in the side of the head with a rubber band, and it was Bitsy over there shooting rubber bands. But yeah, she loved to do that. She loved playing with when Theresa would do the girls' socks. She would roll them up in a ball, and there were times where Bitsy would take the whole sock drawer, and she would have socks scattered all over the house. And I remember we were living in an apartment at that time, and it was a three-story building. We were on the second floor. And what she would do during the summer is we had a coffee table right in front of the air conditioner, and we'd have the air conditioner cranked up, and she would be laying right in front of the AC, and she just loved that. But yeah, she was such a personality. She let it be known from the very start that she ruled the roost. I mean, later on when we had dogs, it was kind of funny because when Bitsy walked, like I said, she was this little tiny thing, and when she walked, she would. You've seen in the some of the videos of the big cats how they would kind of roll their shoulders when they walked, and they walked with attitude, and that is the way she walked. And it was funny because uh, there'd be animals laying in the middle of the living room, and Bitsy would start walking across the living room, and all of the other animals would get up, and it was like parting of the Red Sea. They would get up and move out of her way while she was walking. And she never really, I don't know what it was, she never really attacked any of the other animals, but she just had that "don't screw with me" attitude, and she absolutely loved me. I mean, I was the greatest thing for her since sliced bread. And uh, it was just absolutely amazing. And every time we like when we'd take her to the vet, I don't know how many times that I'd be driving and Theresa would be holding her when we went to the vet, and she would end up peeing all over Theresa. We never had any problems with her, um, not using the litter box. The only time she messed outside of the litter box is Theresa was doing the litter box, and she peed right there where the litter box was supposed to be. And you know, you could tell she felt so bad. And one time, you know, I mentioned that she liked rubber bands and hair ties and stuff. And one time she got some balloons that the girls had, and she ended up swallowing one of the balloons. And she was unconscious. And Teresa, bless her heart, I was at work. Teresa actually did mouth to mouth on her and brought her back to life. And that was just, you know, I was so grateful, you know, because she was an absolute sweetheart. And yeah, she didn't take any crap from anybody. Whenever ever we would be gone from the house for more than 24 hours, especially me, like if I'd go hunting or if I had to go away for work sometimes, I would come home and she would completely ignore me. She'd always, I'd come and sit and talk to her, and she'd turn her back to me and sit with her back facing me. And then after 4 or 5 hours, she would climb up in my lap and she would bite me on the arm, and then everything was cool. And she loved me up. And um, there weren't too many other animals that she was just absolutely infatuated with. Teresa had this little gray tiger stripe male, and his name was Spike. And Spike was a rescue also. And they were just they were soulmates. I mean, they were always laying together and grooming each other, and we end up losing Spike within a couple years. He had feline leukemia, and I have never seen an animal grieve at the loss of another animal like that. I mean, it was just so heartbreaking to see Bitsy. She was going around meowing for Spike, and she'd look around, and then she would just, you could tell she was just absolutely miserable. And then we went through it. It was not quite as severe, but probably a good 10, 12 years later, we end up losing Misty. And, you know, she and Misty were best buds. And same thing. When we lost Misty, Bitsy was just, she was absolutely heartbroken. And, you know, it was so sad to see this little girl that just, you know, um, she was so distraught at losing her buddies. And with the other animals, I don't know what it was, but they all knew that, including me and Teresa and the girls, that they all knew that Bitsy deserved all the respect, and everybody, including us, were absolutely afraid of her. You know, and it wasn't like she would scratch us or anything. She just, you know, if you did something she wouldn't bite, or she did something she wouldn't like, she would come up and she would bite you on the arm and then do the head shake. And she never drew blood or anything, but she let you know that it was not acceptable behavior. And Teresa, she found out that Bitsy didn't like whistling. So what she would do is we'd be sitting around and Teresa would start whistling, and Bitsy would come up and bite me, even though I was just an innocent bystander. And you know, so that was Teresa's revenge on me. But um, that night, when we picked the two girls out from the animal control, Bitsy was supposed to be put down that night because they were having. She'd been there since a kitten, since she was born, and they were having some issues with overcrowding. And Bitsy was supposed to be put down that night, and then Misty was supposed to be put down the next night. And Misty lived to be probably about 15, 16 years old. And then we lost Bitsy when she was about 20. I think she just turned 20 if we did all the calculations. But you know, those were my first. You know, Teresa had Charity, but those are my first cats I'd have from very young through their whole life cycle. And I love cats, but I am very allergic to cats. So every time we'd get a new one, I would go through my eyes swelling shut and the hard time breathing. But it's so hard for me to just stay away from cats because there's just something absolutely cool about them. And then I know there's things that I've forgotten to list, and I should have written them down. And then we're going to move way into the future, and Bitsy had slowed down a lot. And like I said, she was about 20, and we knew that she didn't have much longer left. And we decided this one evening that if unless she showed a marked improvement, we're going to take to the vet and have the vet help her to cross over the Rainbow Bridge. And I was sitting in the living room, and she came up the stairs. She'd been sleeping down in the basement, and she came up the stairs, and you could tell it was quite a bit of an effort for her. And then she climbed up into my lap, and then she wrapped herself around my neck, and she laid there for about 4 or 5 hours. And she was just purring, and she'd lick my neck and everything. And the next morning she was gone. And that is that is one of the hardest things I've been through, was losing her, because I know the if you'll pardon the expression, the circle of life and everything. And I look back now, and I just feel so blessed that we got her for 20 years. And she's one of these family members that will always have a large space right here. um, it's you look at it, you're going through the grief process, and you're looking at it, and I got angry with myself, and I'm thinking, why am I so torn up by this? It's just a stupid cat. But um, all of the fur babies that we've had over the years, they're not just a cat or a dog. They are such a part of the family. I saw that with Teresa. When Teresa and I first met, I had a Mexican red-legged tarantula, and her name was Fred. And she was named before we knew how to tell the difference between a him spider and a her spider. And actually, with Fred, a friend of mine had Fred, and this friend of mine was getting married to my little sister, and my little sister put down the ultimatum: either you get rid of that he gets rid of her, or he gets rid of Fred. And I acquired Fred, so I always told people after that I traded my little sister for a tarantula. And when Teresa and I first got together, first thing she did was buy a locking lid for the aquarium, because all I had on there, she was in an aquarium, a 10-gallon aquarium, with a piece of cardboard with tape holding it down. And in the night, you could hear her. Fred would climb up the glass, and you could hear her thumping on the cardboard trying to get out. And she only got out like once or twice, but Teresa said, nope, we're getting a locking lid. And Fred, she lived to be about, as far as we could tell, about 16 years old. This friend of mine, when he got her, they thought she was about 2 years old. And so going with that, Fred was about 16, and Teresa was really, really broken up about Fred. Every school year, I'd end up having to take Fred into the elementary school, because the girls wanted to use her as show and tell. And then another fun thing to do is, usually about once a year, Fred would shed her skin. And sometimes you'd come out in the morning, and you'd see two Freds sitting in the aquarium, because one of the skins, most of the time, it looked like just another spider sitting there. Because on her carapace, a carapace opened up, and it looked kind of like the hood of a car, and it opened up, and she'd pull herself out through that hole. And then once she dried out and her exoskeleton hardened, then we'd have the extra shed there. And one year we had her shed sitting in a dish on top of one of the speakers, and the windows were open. The wind blew the shed off the speaker, and we had a house full of people, and everybody thought Fred had gotten out. And talk about a huge panic, where Teresa and my sisters and friends and everything, they went running out of the house, yelling and screaming at the top of their lungs. And then one year, it was when I was one of the assistant managers at the grocery store. I took Fred's shed in and I closed this night. And the last thing I did before I closed the door to the safe is I put I put her shed right on the top shelf of the safe. So when you open the safe door, your face was about 6 inches away from this, what looked like a tarantula. And I guess the store director, I guess he called me so many names that morning when he opened up and there was Fred's skin. But even something like a tarantula, we had so many fond memories and we got so emotionally attached to them. And I think since Teresa and I've been together, that we've never had a period in our lives where we haven't had some fur babies. And even though it gets so difficult when you end up losing one, that I don't know how many times I've sworn I'm never going to go through this again, but we do, and we've never bought a fur baby. We've always all but one. They've always been rescues. We've either rescued them from one of the like the Metro Animal Control or the Humane Society, or there was a couple cats that we rescued from family members who were doing a really really poor job of taking care of them. And you know, I have a very very hard time telling Teresa no, but when I see the love and the passion that she can give to these animals, it's just, it is just absolutely incredible. And like I said, how fast these critters can become a part of the family. We had another Tigger, and he was a Maine Coon, which beautiful, beautiful cat, medium hair. And one of the things with Maine Coons, he was kind of black and brown and gold, and the fur has an M right on his forehead. And Tigger was a pretty boy. And I remember I got a phone call at work from Teresa, and she was crying and she was talking about this cat that was out in the cold and this poor little kitten and everything. And and we were at our limit on pets with the landlord. And finally Teresa and we agreed that yes, we're going to take him. And I got home that evening, and it was cold out. I mean, it was another Rocky Mountain winter, and it was cold out. And I came in through the front door, and I told Teresa, well, we need to go out and find him so we can bring him in. And I opened the door, I looked out, couldn't see him anywhere. He was sitting inside right behind me. I don't know how he snuck in, but he was there. And my biggest memory of when he was a kitten was we were having a family dinner over at our place, and we were feeding them all science diet. And when we got Tigger, he was very, very malnourished, and a cat his size maybe should eat about a half a cup of the dry science diet in the course of a day. And I swear Tigger probably ate 2 to 3 cups of science diet. I mean, he just pounded it. Well, the downside when you're getting such a rich diet like that is it gives you very, very bad gas. And mom was over, and Tigger had hopped up in her lap, and mom didn't really know how to handle cats. And she was kind of a little bit standoffish and everything. And he'd curled up in her lap and he fell asleep. And then he blasted off, and this fart that he laid out, probably, I think it cleared the whole house. I mean, it was just the nastiest, foul smelling thing. And we never let mom forget that about the vapor trail that Tigger bestowed on her. So, we've had a lot of pets, a lot of family members. It's hard to think of them as pets, but we've had a lot of family members, and it's really, really hard to look at them as just pets because, yes, they are a member of the family, and we give them all the love, and they return unconditional love. You know, they're just, they look at you with those big brown eyes, and it's just, you kind of like go, ah, you know, and especially like with Jellybean. Jelly does that. She'll give Teresa the look, and you can see Teresa melting. And Nixie or Jellybean has been good for Charlie and Nixie because she has brought out Nixie and Charlie had both become so much more playful. I mean, they're both 11 and they do not act like old dogs. And but Jellybean's been good for the whole family. So you know, we highly recommend that if you're looking at getting a pet, that consider doing a rescue. You know, I mean, some of these critters. We had one dog. His name was Pat, and he was a German Shepherd Chow mix, I believe. And when Teresa and the girls were looking at dogs out at the Humane Society, um, um, they asked about Pat, and the lady out there said he's just another black dog. But you know, Pat was just, when we got him and he saw that big huge backyard and everything, and he'd been out there for between 5.5 and 6 years, and I think he resigned himself that he was just going to die out there. We only had him for about 5 years, but he was such a loving member of the family, and I am so glad. I feel like we gave him the best years of his life. So yeah, if any of you are looking at getting pets, you know, please consider. People want to buy, excuse me, people want to buy the the papered animals, but you know, these the mutts out there. I mean, pretty much we're all mutts, you know, and mutts need love too. So with that, I think I will say goodnight to y'all. And I've got to do some pouring, so I have some stuff ready for show and tell tomorrow. And so I hope you have a wonderful evening. And I hope that you can show the human race that you love them. And I hope they show you love back too. And I hope you really take care of everybody. And we will talk to you tomorrow. Say bye, Teresa.
Bye, Teresa.
Bye.